Hey there. As a parent of a toddler or preschooler, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that the early childhood years can be a turbulent time filled with lots and lots of emotions. And it's our job as parents to help our little ones figure out how to navigate those big emotions in a way that allows them to learn how to do that on their own eventually. So, today I'm going to be talking about a lot of things related to tantrums and meltdowns. First of all, the difference between the two and the similarities between the two. What's going on with the brain during those difficult emotions, as well as some strategies for you as a parent to figure out how to calm the chaos. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so I guess at its core, what we're really talking about here today in this video is emotional regulation. And it's not something that just happens, emotional regulation. It's something that we have to teach our children. Just as we teach them to use a spoon, drink from a cup, and learn how to walk, they're not going to figure out emotional regulation without our support and guidance. And it's always kind of befuddled me why, when we have infants who are, crying and upset, how we're really responsive to that. But somehow when toddlerhood comes along and with preschoolers, that we are less likely to provide them with the emotional support that they need. And I think a lot of times that has to do more with our maybe lack of understanding developmentally of what's going on with their brains and what they're actually able to understand and handle at that age. I think sometimes we assume that because they're able to do these new skills that they've developed, that somehow they're able to handle these big emotions. And I'm here to tell you they're not. So before we go on, I want to start with just a real subtle distinction between a meltdown and a tantrum. So as somebody who's worked with toddlers for almost 25 years, I see tantrums as being related to a limit, where we've had to give them a limit that they can't do something or have something. For example, telling my son when he was 2 that he couldn't have a cookie because we were going to be having dinner in 10 minutes, which would just lead to him falling on the floor, screaming and crying. Now, a meltdown, in my opinion, has more to do with being overwhelmed with sensory information and or being overwhelmed with an emotion, but it's not necessarily related to a limit. So let me give you some examples. So let's say that your 2-year-old is working on a simple little wooden puzzle. They're trying to get the square to go into the triangle, and it's just not working. And the more they try, the more frustrated they become. And eventually they just kind of throw everything and fall on the floor crying and kicking in tears. That would be, in my mind, a meltdown as a result of a big emotion, frustration. Now, another example of a meltdown could be maybe taking a little one to the mall. You're heading in, they're in their stroller, they're excited, they like going out places. You get inside the mall and it's a particularly busy day. There's some kind of crazy event going on, so it's super loud. For some reason, the food in the food court is really smelly that day, and your little one maybe didn't sleep well, maybe they're teething. You get in there and they're just not having it. They're normally pretty happy and can handle those kinds of things, but on that particular day, there's so much sensory information coming in, they're overwhelmed, and it just leads to them screaming and crying, and the only thing that you can do is leave and abandon your shopping trip. That would be an example of a meltdown related to sensory information and sensory overwhelm. So now, having said all this, can meltdowns and tantrums be related? Yes, absolutely, right? There are going to be days where maybe there's some sensory things going on, your child didn't get a lot of sleep, all of that, and then you give them a limit, and it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. So there's a subtle distinction between the two, but there's also a lot in common between the two. And that has a lot to do with what's going on in their brains, whether it's a tantrum or whether it's a meltdown. So let's talk about that for a second. Okay, so when we're talking about the brain piece of meltdowns and tantrums and what's going on there, I really like using the descriptions that Dan Siegel uses in his book, The Whole Brain Child, which I highly recommend to anybody that has kids. It really helps you understand what's going on there. And he uses the analogy, or I should say, describes the brain as a house with a downstairs and an upstairs. So the downstairs is the primitive part of the brain, right? It has to do with our emotions and our reflexes and instincts. The upstairs part of the brain is the analytical thinking, problem solving, empathy, being able to handle and process your emotions, right? That's the cerebral cortex part of the brain. So our toddlers are primarily living on that first floor. They're on the downstairs part of the brain, right? They're running around the bottom floor, rearranging furniture and moving things around and trying to figure out where things go and deciding on their decor. But they are also starting to build a little staircase to go to the upstairs part of the house, the upstairs brain. Now, having said that, the stairwell that they're building, the stairway, is really, really, really rickety. It's not solid at all, okay? Now, on the other hand, our preschoolers, right, they are really solidifying those steps to that upstairs, right? But it doesn't have a railing, right? And sometimes they go upstairs and they hang out up there and they're still doing the same thing, rearranging furniture and figuring out their decor. But a lot of times they kind of tumble down those steps and still kind of want to hang out in the comfy living room couch downstairs because that's just where they feel the most comfortable. So I like that analogy of the downstairs brain and the upstairs brain. What I want you as a parent to understand is that, especially for those parents of three-nagers and preschoolers, right? Even though they have these burgeoning, large, growing vocabularies, right, which makes us kind of think that they're able to access this analytical part of the brain to be able to, they should be able to regulate their emotions. What I want you to understand is that while they can do that sometimes, you shouldn't consider that a skill that they have down in a solid fashion. So in summary, when our toddlers and our preschoolers are feeling those big emotions like fear and anxiety and frustration, anger, all of those, they're going to cause our toddlers and our preschoolers to stay downstairs. And when the brain is flooded with that, they're unable to open the gate to go up the stairs. And that is why they need you to help them learn how to navigate opening up that gate to get back upstairs. Okay, so I want to give you some tips to help you navigate these big emotions. And the first tip is for you to be the calm in their storm. I always tell parents that when their children's emotions go up here, then ours need to go down there. We need to model the emotion that we want from our children, right? So if they're up here screaming and loud, we want to be soft and quiet, right? You'll be surprised at how well that tip in and of itself can work in helping bring agitated children down to a calmer level. My favorite quote for early childhood is from L.R. Nost, and he said, "When little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos." So that's what this is all about, is sharing your calm. Now, having said that, I know that that is easier said than done in some cases and for some parents. So stick with me till the end, and I will share a resource for those of you who may struggle with finding that calm. Okay, my second tip is slightly related to my first, and that is less is more. Okay, so one thing I've observed in my many years of working with families is that oftentimes when our little ones are having meltdowns or tantrums, parents are doing too much talk and too much touch. Now, bear with me. I am not saying that we should be completely ignoring these big emotions. I'm not saying that at all. Rather, what I'm encouraging is that we make a conscious effort to provide support in a way that doesn't overwhelm an already overwhelmed sensory system. continuing to talk and touch during these big emotions can really make it harder for some little ones to calm. So that leads me to my next tip, which is to create a calm down zone. A calm down zone is a designated area or space in your home that is designed to minimize overwhelming sensory inputs, these things that are going on out here, while providing some calming inputs at the same time. Now, I like to use a quiet corner area. I've had some parents over the years who've used a pop-up tent, or even using the child's bedroom. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, the calm down zone should be filled with soft, squishy pillows or bean bags, blankets, stuffed animals, whatever you can think of that would be calming and relaxing. I want you to think about it in terms of swaddling a baby. We swaddle babies to give them sensory input that allows them then to calm and regulate. So if we put our toddler who's having big emotions into a big squishy bean bag with some blankets and some pillows that they can hug, or even a weighted blanket. I've had some parents use weighted blankets, right? We're flooding that sensory system with calming chemicals by doing that and giving them that input, thus hopefully allowing the brain to recoup and regulate more efficiently and more quickly. So the calm down area should also be free of noise such as TVs, radios, lots of people, smells, all of that. We really want their brains to be able to focus on calming rather than having to process all of this extraneous information and sounds and smells in their environment. Okay, so let's talk a moment about using the bedroom for a calm down area. Now, I actually like this strategy a lot if it's done correctly. And the most important part of this is to understand that if you're going to use the bedroom as a calm down zone, this is not the same thing as a timeout. I am not a fan of timeouts. I don't believe in timeouts. Timeout is punitive, and we don't want to punish our children for having big emotions, right? That can cause all sorts of problems down the road. So we don't even want to go there. What we want to do is when we're seeing those big emotions is recognize what they are. Our child is stuck and they need our help, okay? So if you're going to use the bedroom as the calm down zone, it's really all about the messaging and how we handle the process, which I'm going to walk through in a moment. And just know that the ultimate goal here is to establish their room as a place where they can go to feel safe and calm and process big emotions. Because really, that's what most of us do as adults, right? If we've had a really bad day, we go someplace on our own, our bedroom, an office area, outside, whatever the case may be, so that we can process what happened during the day, our emotions, and try to get our head straight before we go and re-engage with our family members. So by using the bedroom or a calm down zone as the calm down zone, you're actually giving them a really useful strategy that they can use well into adulthood. And isn't that really what our ultimate goal is to prepare our children to be able to handle the rigors of adulthood? We used the bedroom as a cool down zone for our kids since toddlerhood. And now don't get me wrong, initially they were resistant, but over time they recognized that what we were just doing was having them go into the room. It wasn't about a punishment. It was about going and calming down and pulling themselves together. And the great thing about it is, I remember many years later when our son, I think he was a freshman, had a really bad day. He came home from school. We asked him if he wanted to talk about it, and he just simply said, "No, I think I want to go chill out in my room for a little bit and cool down. We can talk about it later when I'm in a better mood." We were like, perfect, this is great. So it was a really proud moment for me as a mom to know that this strategy that we had used for many years was something that he was now able to use on his own in a positive way. Okay, so let's talk about what goes into this process of using a calm down zone. So obviously the first step is your child is having a meltdown or a tantrum. The second response should be that you use a repetitive phrase, and you say it only once, but you want to have a phrase that you use every time you're going to implement the calm down zone. So an example might be, oh, you're angry right now. Let's go to your calm down zone. Or it could be, oh, you seem really overwhelmed right now. Let's go to your calm down zone. Whatever terminology you want to use, but you want to use the same phrase every time so that we can build that loop and that neural circuit to help our children understand what this process is going to be more quickly. Okay, so the next step would be to escort your child to the calm down zone, whether that's the bedroom or a corner area, wherever you've got it set up. Ideally, you want to lead them there and have them walk there on their own 2 feet, because that is ultimately the goal, is that they'll go there on their own. And if you can start by escorting them there while you're holding their hand and walking them to their room or the calm down zone, you're already 1 step ahead in getting them to going there independently. Now, if you do have to carry them, you just want to get to that calm down zone as quickly as possible. And the key, if you have to carry them, well, whether you're carrying them or escorting them, is once you've said your phrase, oh, you look like you're upset, it's time to go to your calm down zone, no more talking after that. Okay? No more talking. We want to minimize any additional sensory input, and that includes talking, right? So, once you've gotten to the calm down zone and you've placed your child on the bean bags or the blankets or whatever you've come up with for the calm down area, you can stay in the room or sit next to your child on the floor if needed. Now, if you feel like they don't need that, you can go ahead and walk away. But if you do feel like they need to have you there, you can sit next to them quietly, calmly. Remember, let them feel your energy. Be the calm that you want them to establish in themselves. And if you need to, you can provide them with your hand, hold on to their hand, maybe rub their back if they seem to need that touch. Now, for some kids, the additional touch can make calming even more difficult for them, but you know your child best, so follow your gut on that one. Now, if your child wants to sit on your lap during this process, even if it's just next to the calm down area, that's fine, as long as they're not hitting, kicking, pinching, and doing all of those kinds of aggressive behaviors. If they start doing that while sitting on your lap, then you need to move them back over to the pillows, blankets, whatever you've come up with. If they're just sitting in your lap and they're crying, that's fine. But again, no talking. That's really the key to this whole process, is no talking while they're having those big emotions. You're there to calm them with your feeling, right? What energy that you have there, and by your presence, okay? Now, we want to provide them with some support, but we don't want to inadvertently provide them with reinforcement for behaviors that we're trying to diminish. And that's why we really want to limit how much touch and talk we're doing in that moment. But if they're sitting on your lap as they're calming and you're starting to feel them kind of get back to that zone, you can go ahead and try giving them some bear hugs, some deep pressure, because deep pressure actually releases chemicals to the brain that says, chill out. Now, having said that, there are going to be some kids who aren't going to be responsive to that. Again, I defer to your knowledge of your child. If you feel like the deep touch is agitating them, then back off and just let them sit on your lap. Now, once they've calmed, this is when we fill their bucket. This is when we say, hey, there's my sweet little guy. Let's go play some Play-Doh. And go ahead and go out and play some Play-Doh. We're not going to talk about what just happened there, right? They're smart enough to figure it out. I was upset. I was angry. My mom took me to my calm down zone. We sat there quietly until I wasn't crying and screaming anymore. Once I was done with that, my mom interacted with me and we were able to go play. They're smart enough to figure it out. We don't need to explain everything to them all the time. Okay? So as you leave and you go out and you're going to go back to your daily routine, my suggestion is to get them involved in some sensory play, keeping in mind that things like Play-Doh, water play, rice boxes, sand boxes, those are further ways to help allow them to calm their brains and their sensory systems. All right, that's it. Repeat is necessary. I have no doubt you'll have lots of opportunities to practice the use of the calm down zone. So as we wrap this video up, I want you to just keep in mind that the goal here is to help our children learn emotional regulation. And with the right supports from you, over time, your child's tantrums or meltdowns should decrease in their intensity as well as their frequency. And that's because you're helping them to build and solidify the stairs to the upstairs brain. If you found the information in this video helpful, then please give me a like, and better yet, subscribe to my channel. When you do that, it helps me rise from the depths of the YouTube sea and get my message out in front of other parents that are looking for support. As a bonus, I've included a link down below where you can access my Tantrum Tamer tip sheet. It outlines some proactive ways to try to even avoid those tantrums from even happening. So go ahead and access that down below. And finally, for those of you who may struggle with that part about being the calm in the storm, I have a resource for you as well. If you're interested, I've included a link to the Mentor Mom Academy, which is a membership site program for only $10 a month where you can work with me on a monthly basis. So click on the link below to learn more about that. All right, you guys, that's it. Until next time.